Hello and welcome to the Aid Station. I'm Chris Robb, and today absolutely delighted to be joined all the way from London by Nick Rusling, who is the CEO of Human Race and also the co-chairman of an amazing initiative called the 2.6 Challenge. Hey Nick, great to see you again.
Hey Chris, and you, thank you.
It's been a while, I think probably a year and a half, I guess, since we last caught up in London. It might even be pushing 2 years, but lots has happened in that time. And I guess before we get into some of those amazing initiatives like the 2.6 Challenge, maybe just an opportunity. You've built an amazing business, do so much in the mass participation industry. Just a bit of your personal background and a little bit of the backstory of Human Race, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, of course, Chris. Thank you. I've got a couple of kids and a wife, and we're here at home, and so that's my personal background. Keep me honest, keep me motivated. In terms of my sort of background, my first 3 years in work were with a charity, and I think that sort of never left me. And the last 19 years of my life have been in mass participation sport, and luckily within that environment, you can fuse, certainly in the UK, and I've created and delivered events all around the world now, but certainly in the UK, you can fuse the mass participation dynamic of getting people fit, healthy, crossing a finish line with the charity, and so that's been just kept me just unbelievably motivated for a long period of time now. And I've been lucky enough to be originally part of a business that had a great appetite for risk and delivering these mass participation events with proper ambition, proper scale, shutting down the roads of London, losing a lot of money in the early years. So I started on the London Triathlon when it was 800 people. And we were losing six-figure sums, and the chairman I worked for just said, look, he believed, and this was 2001, and we grew it to 14,000 people. So off the back of that, we carried on and created more events. We shut down the first sort of fully closed roads event in the UK, cycling-wise. And then we got bought by IMG, and I became the MD of the IMG's mass participation portfolio. We created Abu Dhabi and Barcelona Triathlon, Stockholm. Amazing time delivering events overseas. And then I set up my own company in 2010 with some investors. And that was all, again, focused mass participation, cycling, triathlon, running. And 2016, as was the plan, we sold to ASO, incredible French family organization who own the Tour de France, Dakar Rally, Paris Marathon, Barcelona, and Human Race. And I've been part of that family now for over 3 years, and I love it. It's a great business, and they leave me a lot to our devices in the UK, but we collaborate a lot on the things like the Tour de Yorkshire and bringing the Tour de France to life in the UK. And then I've got a colleague in France who's similarly running a huge portfolio of mass participation. So there's a lot of collaboration, like the trials and tribulations we're going through now, how best to navigate issues and how best to make the most of opportunities. So we've sort of got a database of 1 million people now through Western Europe, but I run the UK arm of ASO, which is called Human Race.
Wonderful, Dig. How wonderful to be part of something as big as that and to have that exposure to the pinnacle of cycling. And you mentioned different challenges, and obviously there's plenty of them. What's life like at the moment in terms of obviously the various stages of lockdown starting to ease, but running that business in a remote environment? What does a day-to-day look like for you? And we'll talk a little bit later about the amazing work that you've done with the 2.6 Challenge. Is there enough time in the day for Nick Rusling to get some sleep and actually spend time with that family that you're living with?
There is. It's balanced now. I mean, the 2.6 will come back to, but I think we were able. It was a weird environment. I felt we were in, where things were moving very quickly, but also very slowly. So every day, you could really analyze what the latest information was, either from a business point of view, cash flow, positioning, opportunities to deliver events or not. And get it right, and try and get it right, and try and make the right decisions. So, and that's obviously for them in turn for the team at Human Race to make sure that they're front and center of everything we do, because we'll be back. We'll be back next year, and I don't know whether we'll be back delivering events later this year, and time will tell. But so really, the first few weeks were about slowly and systematically removing events from the portfolio, and obviously that meant getting it right for the stakeholders involved, the cities, but crucially the customer. And it was a very open environment through the industry in the UK, and we were really sharing information on particularly around refunds, policies, referrals, whether you could ultimately keep the money of the customer because of the promise of something in the future, and people were going to vote with their wallets, and we didn't know whether they're going to want the money back or whether they're going to say, you know what, we'll stick around, and a lot of that depended on how well we communicated and what options we gave them. So there was a lot of really good shared information through the industry, because no one wants anyone to be floundering because of wrong information. And so with the Manchester Marathon, which was our first event, we postponed. Should have been on the 5th of April. We've moved it to the 11th of October. We were one of the earliest ones to put the news out there that we were going to not be staging it in April. So this was back in March. And with that, we bought a little bit of time, and then we gave the customers the option. And about 80% of people wanted to take part in the event in October. And that's been a recurring theme, and that's been recurring through the industry. I know it's actually similar in festivals and the music industry as well. So it's an interesting time when most of our revenue comes through the customer spending their sums of money to take part in the events. Getting that right is critical, and continuing to make sure that we treat everyone as obviously intelligent, making sure we get the information right, even if it's buying time because we haven't got all the information, it's letting them know. So a lot of the time of the team, all the different departments of our teams were really poring over every last word that we were sharing on social media as well, just to try and get the sentiment and the feeling of the country right. And if you misjudge that, and a few companies in our industry have misjudged it, and it backfires quite badly. So a lot of the time was spent getting that right. And now a lot of the time at Human Race is looking at sort of 3 or 4 or 5 different options for pretty much every event we've got, ranging from delivering where we can in September, October. The likelihood of those events happening, I would say, is diminishing by the day, but we've got to be prepared to do that. Delivering events that take place on the same day, but take a different form, maybe obviously with social distancing in mind. And then not delivering any events at all this year, and obviously the impact that has on the business and the team, and then preparation, when can we start marketing events for next year? So there's probably a number of different dimensions to any event that we're having to consider, and just make sure we're ready to take the right decision at the right time.
And how's your team cope with that? I mean, one of the discussions, and this is, I think, probably going to be episode 24, 25, is I've spoken to a lot of people, from Andrew Messick, Joe DeSena, and one of the themes that's come out as well is the younger members of the team have found it pretty tough. The older ones like us that have been around for a while, we've been through a GFC, we've been through a 9/11, we've had adversity in our life, but there's a lot of young people on teams that are passionate about this industry, that this is their first bit of real adversity, and it's real adversity. How are you managing team members like that, and what's the kind of sentiments within the team of the younger staff members?
We're 25 people, so it's not so many that we can't try and understand everyone's personal situation, and I'm not sure I would be quite as sweeping as categorizing it by age. I think different people have different circumstances. We've furloughed about half our team, so again, within that environment, some people might be quite happy to be furloughed, some people finding it disparaging and fundamentally getting quite bored and concerned, and others are working and putting in work that is needed, and filling their days from that point of view. So and within that, you've got different financial circumstances, you've got people living with friends, you've got people living with family. So I think we're trying to look at it by the individual. I think if you get into maybe a bigger scale of company, but 25 is enough for us to be really talking to the individuals, to the managers of individuals, making sure we have good time communicating. We have team time, and we bring the furloughed everyone back optionally, whether they want to come back to a team meeting, and we have a nice environment where we have a theme and everyone dresses up, and we go around and everyone says hello. And when we did the 2.6 challenge, everyone went round and said what challenge they did and what charity they supported. And it was really nice hearing which charities they support. So we're not assuming that it's more difficult for any type of person, particularly whether they're working, they're furloughed, or their age. we're just trying to communicate and make sure that we marry the government information with our business circumstance, and just keep that conversation channel alive, so that people aren't feeling left out or sort of disjointed from the information of the business decisions. And around that,
Sorry, no, that whole communication thing, I mean, you mentioned it a few times, isn't it? The communication with your team, your partners, your stakeholders, your participants, the ones that do it best are going to be the ones with a better chance of coming out of this, I think. Yeah.
It's got to be centered to it all, and you've got to do it with the right sentiment, and you've got to do it with the right information. You don't have to magic information out from nowhere either.
Yeah. Great point. And you mentioned the 2.6 challenge, and one of the things that I'm seeing, there's a lot of innovation happening, but there's also a lot of leadership happening in the industry. And you've done two things in one, really. I mean, you've helped to bring an industry together, which has traditionally been quite disparate, operated in different sort of silos. So congrats on that. And then this great innovation of putting on this amazing event, which before we came on air, you said there's a good chance that during the course of the recording, you're going to pass the 10 million mark, which was absolutely amazing. Tell us, for those, I mean, it's widely known in the industry, but this is going globally. Just a little bit of background into what made it happen and what it's about and what objectives it's hit, please.
Well, thank you for the kind words. It's an amazing thing to have been part of. It's as an idea, as a concept, I think I sort of go back to something like Hoover or Dyson, where I think there were about 1,000 iterations of Dyson before it came to one that was available for the market. And I think 2.6 was just a series of opportunities, of circumstances, of ideas, and all with the right spirit around it to get to where we got to. It started within an industry where you mentioned we began to collaborate together really closely around the topic of sustainability. Where we've created a forum of some of the bigger event organizers, and we're going to open it up to the entire industry. We're just not quite ready to sort of to do that from a communication point of view. So we just felt we'd get a few key people together to talk around, rather than everyone try and crack the issue of plastic bottles at events. It was a much bigger topic around sustainability. So really getting into the data. And if you look at something like the aviation industry, where they share information, they share black box, they share anything that's led to a disaster, because no one wants to trade off the back of a crashed plane and hopefully pick up more business if you're in a competing aviation company. So it was very much with that spirit in mind, that no one wanted to be a better business because we crack sustainability before somebody else. So we had a really positive spirit that was around some really influential people in the industry in the UK. And off the back of that, we had emails and chains of communication and Microsoft Teams set up. And so all the infrastructure was there. And alongside that, we had this dawning realization that by not putting on the marathons or the events that we were due to put on, charities were being impacted. So we got together and said we should do something about it. And it became pretty clear with the types of people we had in the conversation that it wasn't just about filling the hole of a few marathons, even though that amounts to about 100 million. It was actually filling a much bigger hole in the country, and it was about putting on a challenge, because that's what we trade in. Normally you have a physical finish line in our industry, but it was putting on a challenge because we knew that there is a connection between people who complete challenges and charity. But the trick was to put it on that was inclusive for anyone in the whole country and any charity. And we were very, very firm in the fact that we didn't want to just focus on COVID-related charities. So it had to be a challenge. And this was sort of the brainstorm we got stuck into. How do you put on something that is for anyone and every charity? And the 2.6 was an idea that London Marathon team had been kicking around. And they were going to put it on around for the 40,000 runners who wouldn't have been doing that. And we broadened it out, and we felt that it gave us this platform to harness it on the date when the London Marathon would have been, the 26th, which was fortuitous, of April, the 26-mile distance, create the 2.6, much debate as to whether it should be 26 challenge or 2.6. And we just felt that you could be creative around it. And that was, again, a source of much sleeplessness was, would it be too creative? If you do something which is 5 kilometers, everyone go and do it. People understand it straight away. It needs no explaining. So we bolted on to the 2.6 challenge, Save the UK's Charities. We made those two live together in all circumstances. And I think the key then was, once we explained what the challenge was, we communicated heavily behind the scenes in a sort of B2B way to the industry, to charities, to event organizers, to businesses, to the media, so that it had a platform to then launch upon, with BBC behind it, with government behind it. And then the fact that the actual concept could be translated so easy to video and to social media, we didn't really need to explain it, because everyone was doing their own challenges, and it just took off. And luckily, you know, again, we were very mindful of the fact we didn't want it just to be fun, even though it played a real purpose to distract and to give people a connection point together with friends and family all around the world. But it had to be with the donation aligned with it. And it just soon sort of became apparent that was going to all materialize. So it was an amazing 3 weeks to pull it together, with 100 people working on it, all virtually, most of whom I'd never met in my life. I co-chaired it with Hugh Brasher, and we bounced off each other very well. And we had some fantastic heads of different departments, effectively, work streams, we called them, whether it be marketing, social media, charity, databases. We split it all out. We had daily meetings, and the weekend of the challenge, when it kicked off, was just astonishing. And it was weird, because it was an event, effectively, and I think it will be a world record breaking event, in the sense that it will have the most charities involved with it, more than any of other events that's ever taken place. But I was in my own back garden, and I had a barbecue.
Hopping down your back garden there, and you'd be pleased to know we chatted beforehand. It's made its way to Bali. I had a one-on-one challenge with my 5-year-old at the weekend, and he beat me 26-24. Hey, I'd love to, time flies as always, but I'd love to end on and that's an incredibly inspiring story, but I always like to end on something inspiring, and maybe it's a story from one of the challenges, or something else that you're seeing in these times. Congratulations again on that amazing achievement, but something to just end on an even higher high, if that's possible.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I will pick on the 2.6 challenge, because, you know, something that I love about mass participation is the range of people taking part, and I love the people who come across last, and that's really what motivates me the most, I think. And so the part of the 2.6 that was close to me and closest to me was my mother, who's 73, and she's got really cripplingly bad arthritis, and she can hardly walk. And she decided to take on a challenge, which was 26 laps of her front path. And she, so I ran around and filmed it, and went on social media, and she's got this lovely sense of humor, and she sort of pretended it was her Olympic stadium, and she put tins of baked beans down as cones, and she did this challenge. And then it got picked up by tens of thousands of people on social, just because, you know, there was a woman who was having a struggle to achieve her 2.6 challenge, really connected with her charity, St. Christopher's Hospice, and she then decided to do it for 26 days. So she's still going. She's raised £11,000, and all of that's great. And there were many examples of that. But I think what's been wonderful has been how good it's been for her mental health. She's on her own. She's very vulnerable medically, so she can't see anybody. But it just gave her a lovely focus. She was bowled away by the interest and the support, and it's really motivated her. And so to age, she's inspiring, for she's just the type of woman who will do these types of things, but just charmingly unassuming with it. And she's been blown away, and it's just been lovely to see how this 2.6 challenge has had this one connection, obviously one close to me, but I know there are millions of others around
all over the country. Yeah, wonderful.
Exactly.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that, and thanks again for making time. I know you got lots on, and you got to head off to another call. So thank you so much, Nick. Great to see you again, and all the best in the rest of the 2.6, because I know it's ongoing, and obviously hoping that you'll get your events up and running soon, and look forward to catching up with you in London next year at some stage.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Chris.
Take care, mate. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thanks.